getting tired of hearing it, but how close was Nebraska in 2025? Coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, welcome in. It's Thursday, Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is here as well. Been a busy week around the state of Nebraska. All the reaction to Dylan Raiola's injury. Dylan had his surgery on Wednesday. That's the understanding in New York. TJ Lateef is now your starting quarterback. If you haven't heard, he's headed home to Los Angeles, where Nebraska will play Saturday night against UCLA. The Huskers will be off on their flight Friday. Big Ten after dark game, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. So it's like 9 o'clock from a week ago's time, if you're still adjusting to the clock being turned back.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope we've gotten
some
there.
People.
Right.
Some people are still adjusting.
Some people. Yeah, I don't know who you're specifically referring to, but
I don't know.
We got the coffee. We're rocking and rolling, baby.
So on Tuesday night, we spent yesterday's show. We didn't react to this because we spent yesterday's show going over what Dana Holgorsen and John Butler and what Deshaun Singleton had to say about the grass at the Rose Bowl, all that kind of stuff that came out of Lincoln. On Tuesday night, we were gifted CFP Selection Committee rankings for the first time in this 2025 calendar year. By the way, I do want to mention that Troy Dannon, Nebraska's athletic director, is on the committee this year. And so is Mike Riley, Nebraska's former football coach. You may remember him. So do you think, Connor, before we get to this topic about the committee rankings, do you think that Mike Riley and Troy Dannon cross paths in these boardrooms, and what might they say to each other?
Maybe there was like a general like meet and greet. Everybody goes around the room. By the way, did you see the video of them all putting their hats on their? They hung their hats on like a coat hanger before they walked into the room. It was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. So they all, as they entered the committee room to make the first rankings, all the committee members like took off hats.
So like Dannon had a Nebraska hat and he took his hat off.
No. They were like playoff branded hats. It was just it was so odd. Whatever.
It would have been better. It would have been better if he had a Nebraska hat on.
Yeah,
and like Mac Rhodes, the Baylor. By the way, the chair of the committee is the Baylor athletic director who brought Matt Rhule to Baylor. So Mac Rhodes and Troy Dannon, I'm sure they've met before, but they could have some conversations about Nebraska's football coach. And then Mike Riley could chime in and say, hey, I used to work there. That kind of thing.
I wonder. Yeah. So getting to that part, sorry, I got caught up on the hat thing. Like
you should have took off their hats, like their hats. Like Dannon had a Nebraska hat. He's like, I'm not wearing my Nebraska hat in here.
Right. That would have made more sense, but they did the thing that made less sense. So I imagine it's something like, hey, they all go around the room. Let's all meet each other, introduce ourselves. And Riley's doing this in like a more not individual setting, like a everybody's in the room. And he goes, I was the head coach at Nebraska at one point. And I
had a press conference after I got fired to thank everyone.
Wait, you were? When was that? And then they go about their day probably.
It would be fun. It would be fun to be on a fly on the wall in that room, and maybe like there's a bathroom break or something like that, and Troy and Mike, go off through the hallways of the hotel that they're at in Dallas to meet, and they just start up a conversation about the things that happened at Nebraska when Mike Riley was the coach. Maybe they talk about Sean Eichhorst. Maybe they talk about Dave Remington, his interim AD before Bill Moose came on board. It seems like decades ago. Okay, so the reason that we want to bring up the committee in the committee's rankings, because we're going to bring this back to Nebraska. So there were 7 Big Ten teams in the first poll. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Indiana. Number 9, Oregon. Number 19, USC. You may remember them. Number 20, Iowa. You may know them. Number 21, Michigan. You may remember them. Number 23, Washington. The SEC had 9 teams in the top 25. The Big 12 has 3. The ACC has 5, but none above number 14, plus Notre Dame. And that's it. So if Nebraska had won on Saturday against USC, would Nebraska have been in these rankings? I think it's reasonable to say that at 7-2, they would have been. You have 2 loss Big Ten teams all over the bottom half of the rankings with those squads that I mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah, like what you have basically is like a 3-way tie between USC, Iowa, and Michigan at this point. And USC is properly rated in front of Michigan because they beat them. Now, Nebraska, had they had the win against USC, they would not have the win against Michigan. And so maybe it'd be like a slightly different order, but they'd be in USC's place. Absolutely. 100% right now. And so with a chance to be the 4th representative of the Big Ten in the college football playoff. And once again, we've been saying all year, the 4th from the Big Ten, like that is assuming Oregon rips through November here. Like they have a pretty tough, slate in front of them. So there's that piece. Ohio State and Indiana are almost certainly locks at this point. They'll play each other in Indianapolis and it won't matter who wins. And so, yeah,
matter for a bye. Well, it might not even matter for a bye. Like
they might both get buys. Yeah. So, right. It won't matter as far as who makes it or not. And then, Nebraska would be right at the forefront of that conversation as far as one of the top non-top 3 teams in the Big Ten.
I actually think that if Nebraska had won, let's say Nebraska wins 24-21 against USC, Dylan Raiola doesn't get hurt, or TJ Lateef leads Nebraska to a win. They bust a play on that last drive. We'll probably put the Raiola scenario more in play because the committee would hold that against Nebraska if Raiola went down and then Nebraska won to sneak to 7-2. They do that stuff. They're like, hey, I heard some of this from Mac Rhodes and his explanation about the committee's rankings. It's like, well, we don't think their offensive line is that good. You've got Mike Riley, the ex-coach on the committee. You have Ivan Maisel, the former media member on the committee. So they can break these things down. Like I say this sarcastically, they can look at and watch a team on TV and like make these arbitrary decisions that you shouldn't be ranked that high because your defensive line stinks, that kind of stuff. I think where Nebraska would have ended up if it was 7-2, obviously USC's out of it. So I think Iowa would have been the next highest ranked team after the top 3. And then you would have seen Michigan, Washington, and probably Nebraska at like the 24 or 25 spot around where Tennessee is in the rankings right now. Tennessee is 25. That to me, that's what it would have looked like. But that doesn't take away the reality that Nebraska would have had a chance. And you'd be going to UCLA, you have Penn State, you got Iowa in a key game there at the end. Maybe you're playing for an at-large playoff spot.
Yeah, you're still in it.
Iowa. You are absolutely in it. And I think there was a collective rolling of the eyes from most of the country, including the Nebraska fan base, that Nebraska as a 2-loss team last week against USC was playing in something that resembled a playoff elimination game. And then maybe that's because people thought, well, there's no way Nebraska is going to run the table in November, but these are all flawed teams. And I think people need to adjust the way that they're quick to discard teams just because they don't look very good on a Saturday in September or a Saturday in October. You can get blown out by Minnesota in October and make the college football playoff at the end of, in the first week of December, just because you're in the Big Ten and you made it through at 10-2. Like it can happen. It will happen. There will be teams in it that don't look better than what Nebraska looked like at times early in the season.
Yeah. You got to throw out whether, like you said, your whole this team is good or this team isn't good. It doesn't matter anymore. You can not be very good, quote unquote, and make the college football playoff if you win the requisite amount of games and if you win them against the right teams and if you don't lose to the wrong teams. Like it's resume based at this point. There are biases that go into it, and there's going to be a couple decisions that have to get parsed through at the end of this thing, like when we actually start the playoff, when the teams are actually selected. But for the most part, as I always say, there's a lot of consternation about this every year, and especially with the rankings, but it usually works itself out. You could usually tell who the top teams are, and they slot into those spots. And number 12 or 11, whatever, if when the group of 5 team comes in, it ain't going to be that good. They're not going to be that good. They're going to have warts on their resume, and they're going to have a lot of warts as a football team. And we know that Nebraska was obviously that this year. I still doubt whether they would actually be able to get in at 10-2, but they'd be right there in that conversation with all the other flawed teams that are up for those last 2 or 3 spots.
I don't know if they had beaten USC and then beaten Iowa, especially if Iowa does what Iowa needs to do here this month, beats Oregon. We'll talk about that game later in this episode. And then Iowa goes to USC for its next game. So that would have been, you talk about a Nebraska-Iowa game that would have had a lot on the line. Now, I mean, it's not just Dylan Raiola avoiding the injury on Saturday night. It's Nebraska then going and taking care of business on the road at UCLA and at Penn State in consecutive games. I get that we're kind of far away from that playing out, but not as far away as I think a lot of people want to act when they discuss 2025 Nebraska. Like Virginia right now is in the playoff. Memphis, of course, is the G5 representative. Memphis is not even, you can't find them in the top 25. They're not there. So the committee has to continue to rank like into the 30s to get to a G5 team. Like that stuff is going to happen, and it's going to happen every year. And like this $1 million salary escalator that Matt Rhule has in his revised contract as of last week, it's something that absolutely could become a factor as Nebraska moves forward in years to come.
The word playoff should not be foreign, and it shouldn't sound weird. There, it's very, very possible if things line up the right way. So yeah, it's a good point, and you're not that far away. You're closer than you have been, and
closer than I think most people believe.
Yeah, and that's worth noting as well.
Because the standard from the 4-team playoff, the mindset hasn't changed enough. It's still, you're looking at a team and you're trying to determine if they're playoff worthy, and the bar has been lowered significantly. Oh. And at some point, we're going to go to a 16-team playoff, and then the bar is going to go down even more.
Exactly. All right, let's take a quick step aside here. Happy to report and bring to you that Nebraska is the champion of something. Back after this.
All right, got a message for you right now from Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. More than 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Supply House has a real-time inventory and honest lead times that keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You see the football references there? You need parts for a project fast? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The parts finder tool and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail mattered, and their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support, it makes the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, as we mentioned, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service.
Coming up in just a few minutes, we will make some picks for the game, Nebraska and UCLA in the Rose Bowl on Saturday night. But if you missed the news this week, the This is the news of the week. This is big news. So Matt Brown, extra points Matt Brown, as I call him. There's
two Matt Browns.
There's multiple Matt Browns, so I call this.
I work with the Matt Brown at the Athletic.
Brown. Right,
this is not that Matt Brown. Yeah,
extra points Matt Brown. He sort of reports on the it's sort of like an oddities thing. He requests a lot of Freedom of Information Acts. He requests a lot of FOIA's information from universities that they haven't necessarily published, and he puts it out there in a newsletter. And so he got curious about how schools are doing during football games with alcohol sales. And he published a list a couple days ago, and it said that Nebraska was in second and Wisconsin had won the beer race. They had gained the most revenue in beer sales. It was like $2 million.
Zero surprise there.
Yeah. I was like, all right, yep, second, we'll settle for that. It's good enough. And there was a pretty large gap in between second and third. Then about 24 hours ago, Matt Brown said, actually, pause. I have incorrect information. Nebraska actually has the most beer sales.
What happened there? Did anybody get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Wisconsin must have reached out to him and said, hey, look, you're just looking at this wrong. Like, because he gets like raw data and information, and sometimes schools sort of report it in different ways and put it in different categories.
You're right.
I'm sure he just read it wrong. But
sometimes you'll request a FOIA and you want like 2 bits of information, and they send you 68 pages.
Right.
So
and half of it's redacted and like whatever it might be. So yes,
this is alcohol sales data for home games in August and September. So
August and September. Okay, thank you. And then he did also say that he was requesting like dozens more from other schools. So maybe Nebraska, like the job isn't done yet, but whatever it might be, Nebraska is going to be toward the top of alcohol sale revenue in the country. So congratulations.
Yeah, on this list now, the Huskers are at the top. So Nebraska had 3 home games. This does not count Arrowhead Stadium. If you counted Arrowhead Stadium in this list, Nebraska would have maybe doubled every other team on the thing. But as it is, with just the 3 home games in September, and most of the teams at the top, I checked here, most of the teams at the top had 3 home games. There were a few with 2. I believe Michigan had just 2 home games in September. But Nebraska leads the way with 168,000 units sold. So they're selling about 55,000 units a game. I don't know, a unit, I guess that's a beer can.
One beer, yeah.
Yeah. 2.1 million in total revenue for Nebraska. So that's not a small number. Tennessee was second at 1.6 million, followed by LSU, Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Illinois. So you see in every aspect of college football, the Big Ten and the SEC dominate. We just got done talking about the CFP rankings and those 2 conferences having 16 of the 25 teams. Every one of those teams that I just mentioned, and there's a huge drop off after that. Those are all the schools, at least among those that reported back to Matt, that were over 500,000 in sales. There's only one team there not in the Big Ten or the SEC, and that's West Virginia, which in thinking about it is not really a surprise that they drink a lot of beer in West Virginia. So
not at all.
I don't know. What do you take away from this? Nebraska has some more money to pay its next offensive tackle in the transfer portal because people are drinking lots of beer on Saturday at the stadium?
Not really. But like I always, when these figures come out, it's always funny because they put it out in revenue and it's like, okay, what revenue? That's great. But like, what's the profit margin here? Like what are we putting in? Nebraska had to spend a lot of money for the infrastructure to be able to sell these beers inside the stadium. So like, I always think about that because I'm just a party pooper, I guess. But like, it's an additional revenue stream for Nebraska. I'm sure they're making money off of it in some way, shape, or form. And they total it up at the end of, if Nebraska's a $160 million revenue athletic department, this just, adds to it. And then they subtract from what they're putting in at the end of the day. So they're going to put in whatever they whatever they make back into the budget for next year and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just another thing. I don't know that Nebraska all of a sudden just has like a free $2 million sitting on their doorstep, but anything helps, I guess.
You might equal out to $2 million in profit by the end of the year when you throw in all the additional home games. This is just the first 3. So, and they sell alcohol at PBA. It's now basketball season and the Devaney Center. So, I think it's enough to be significant in an entire. We'll be very interested to see when the data comes out, and it's going to be a while. It won't be until like January of 2027 before you get the full fiscal data on what the 25-26 year looked like financially for Nebraska. But I would guess that the amount of profit that Nebraska makes across the athletic department on alcohol sales in this year that we're now experiencing is not a small number.
Yeah, I think it's something, but like ultimately this is for fan experience. It's an expense, and obviously you're able to make money off of it as well. And so whatever comes in, that's good. I don't know that you can bake that into the cake necessarily. It might be like a sort of inconsistent, thing year by year, depending on how big your games are and whatever it might be. But it's a fan. That's what Dan said at the beginning. This is a fan experience thing for Nebraska, and obviously the fans love it. It's great. It's nice to be able to have a beer at the football game or at the basketball game. It helps the experience for sure.
I'm guessing there won't be a ton of beer sold at the Nebraska-Iowa game if it's 13 degrees, but who knows? They'll
be up after a certain amount.
They'll still find a way. Yeah. All right. If nothing else, it should warrant a raise for the public address announcer at Pinnacle Bank Arena.
Agreed. That's where the money should go. 100%.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to our picks, let's highlight a couple of keys for sharp turn here. Let's highlight a couple of keys for Nebraska UCLA Saturday night at the Rose Bowl. When we come back from a break here in a minute, we're going to make our picks and prop picks on that game. But where does your mind go if you need to pick out one thing that's going to matter most in this game for Nebraska's ability to win?
Yeah, I think it's sort of defensively for me for Nebraska. Like,
all right,
you have to be able to contain Nico Iamaleava. He is their leading passer and their leading rusher this year, and it's sort of an interesting matchup. Nebraska likes to play a lot of man on the edges and cover down the field, which should give Nico a bunch of opportunities to pull and run with it. So Nebraska is going to have to probably commit an extra defender to him and tackle. And so that's not something that they've always done particularly well with this kind of quarterback. He can be explosive in the right moments, and their receiver stats are, I love saying their receivers' names, by the way. Quasi Gilmer, Titus, Mokiao, Atimalala. Those guys they have awesome names. Those guys are pretty good players. But they don't have stats this year just because Nebraska or UCLA's offense really, really, really sputtered, especially at the beginning of the year. So I think those guys are good players, and so the matchup sort of gets won partly in that conversation and what Nebraska can do to sort of limit that.
In some way tied to a key to victory. Maybe what interests me most about this game is I want to see what Nebraska does at the beginning of the game offensively, because with a new quarterback, Dana Holgorsen, the offensive coordinator, Dana Holgorsen. He's going to go immediately to the things that work for TJ Lateef, like to build his confidence, to make him feel comfortable. You don't necessarily need to do that with a QB who started 20 games or 20 plus games like Dylan Raiola. But you're going to know off the bat what they feel like TJ can do best. And that's script for me. As long as Nebraska's not backed up at the 5-yard line because of a punt on its first possession or a penalty, then if they're at the 25 to the 35, you're going to get a great sense right off the bat of what TJ can do and where they feel confident with him. So yeah, I'm going to be watching that.
It's a big game offensively. It's a big game for run the ball guy. I mean, Nebraska's they're They're going to run that thing. So that will be what they do. And how many yards or how explosive they are through the air might tell you just how successful Nebraska's offense is going to be. They're already going to be pretty good. UCLA's defense isn't very good, and so how much they trust them, I think, will be an interesting thing to watch and you'll be able to tell that with how much they put the ball in the air.
Okay, on the subject of how many yards, we'll get to that right after this.
But first, a word from our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook, where the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the association. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to who might come back in the fourth quarter, which, once again, they happen a lot in the NBA. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps all the games exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Nebraska UCLA on Saturday night, 8 o'clock at the Rose Bowl. Timmy B back on the call. LA Timmy B, Devin Gardner rocking it again, third time this year for Nebraska. And so enjoy that. That'll be good.
Fox, Big Fox, Timmy B on Big Fox.
Thank God they're not on ESPN, which they wouldn't be, but you wouldn't be able to watch it if you have.
There are
YouTube
some problems
TV.
with ESPN if you have YouTube TV. So
yeah,
got to find those workarounds, people. Be resourceful.
Okay. All right. That's good. I might have to talk to you about some of those workarounds coming up. All right. TJ Lateef is Nebraska's starting quarterback this week, and theoretically for the remainder of the year. We're going to set his first passing yards number at 129.5.
Whoa. That's a dip from what we've seen in this number recently with Dylan Raiola. Although the last couple of weeks, Dylan's number has been more. Now he played just 55% of the game against USC, threw for 91 yards. But it's been trending down as Nebraska becomes run the ball team. So I like the Huskers' ability to run it on Saturday night. I think that's what they're going to focus on doing. But I also think that an extension of that running game is getting the ball to Hunter, Key, Barney, Clark, Cortez Mills, all in like short passing situations. I think they're going to want to incorporate more than just the top three receivers. So you may see Lateef's like yak be fairly high, but I'm still going to say under on 129.5.
Oh, wow. I thought you were really building toward an over there. For all the same reasons, for all the same reasons, I'm going over. I think it's, if he could get 150, that's good, and I don't think it'll be particularly hard to get. I mean, they're going to keep it on the ground, but maybe a couple kill shot attempts in there as well for TJ. Yeah,
he can throw the deep ball. He throws a nice looking deep ball. I'm going to say under.
I think they'll trust him more than people are thinking. So, like we talked about yesterday, Nebraska backup quarterback above replacement. He's toward the top. Let's go to the other side. Nico Iamaleava, 144.5 passing yards. He averages 183 per game.
That does seem low, doesn't it? Both of those numbers seem low. Like he should be throwing for more than that. But the problem here is that UCLA doesn't have a bunch of great receivers, great names for their receivers, but not great receivers out there.
Well, the problem is Nebraska's pass defense is sick.
That's also a problem.
Yes, that's a problem.
144.5. I'll actually say over. I'm going to say he goes over that.
I'll reverse you again. I'll go under. Nebraska's pass defense stands again and holds Nico to limited yardage through the air.
Okay, so his rushing yardage is also a key number to watch in this game. He ran for 128 and 3 touchdowns against Penn State a few weeks ago. That was shocking. And then he's been held back somewhat since then to lower numbers, but that shows you what kind of ability he has to do this against, if nothing else, an athletic and talented defense in Penn State. So 63.5 is where we put this.
Yeah, you got to be disciplined here, and I think he gets a lot of his stuff, his rushing yards when he really starts to rack them up. Like it's scrambles, and so that's a difficult thing to defend. I think it's a good number. I'll take over because I don't know where else they get their yards, to be honest with you. Like they got to come from somewhere. So I guess I'll take the over, but it doesn't have to mean a bad thing for Nebraska.
I think young Neuheisel in the off week that UCLA has had here ahead of the Nebraska game has been watching Nebraska film and looking at what works against the Nebraska defense, and it's going to jump off the page. You're going to see Brendan Sorsby getting yards. You're going to see Bryce Underwood getting yards, and it's going to be a big part of their game plan to try to get Nico involved on the ground. So, plus they've had a week to rest. In theory, he should be feeling fresh. I like him over on the 63.5 in addition to the 144.5. So I like Nico to have a nice game.
All right. Emmett Johnson, 131.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm going over on that too. Emmett's going to have a big game. I see him with a second consecutive 150 night.
Yeah, that number just keeps creeping up more and more and more. But it's hard to not expect it at this point. I'll go with you. Over 131.5 for Emmett Johnson, the featured player in Nebraska's offense. Will Nebraska make a big play on special teams? Where are we headed with this? Will they make a big play on special teams?
Yeah, so I just made all this up. This is a 50-yard plus field goal or a 30-plus yard punt return, a 50-plus yard kickoff return, a blocked kick, any kind of kick, could be an extra point, or a punt down inside the 5. There's a lot of options out there. So will Nebraska make one of those plays Saturday night at the Rose Bowl?
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah. Let's say for no particular reason other than it wasn't there last week, and let's get it back this week. Yes.
What is it going to be?
Let's go. The punt return stuff has sort of dried up a little bit, hasn't it? But let's go back to that. Ja'Cory finally gets one going in the punt return game. Not a touchdown, but a nice return.
I'll say they make 2. That Achi is going to have a punt down inside the 5, and in the nice warm air of Los Angeles, Kyle Cunanan is going to kick a 50-yard field goal.
Oh, so you're specifically going to the specialists. I like that. All right, kicker punter game. How many touches for Isaiah Hunter, Dane Key, and Ja'Cory Barney combined?
Last week we asked how many catches the three of them would get. We set the over/under at 10.5. They had 10. So props to the handicapper here.
Nice job.
I'm going to say this: that we're including touches this week. This does not include touches on special teams, but I'm going to say offensively that these three guys are going to have 13 touches on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a good number. You have to, get the ball to them a little bit more creatively, but I still think they'll get their catches. I mean, the Barney thing of him just not being much of a factor over the last couple of weeks, that is not as much of an anomaly anymore, more than a trend. And they just haven't been able to do it. So I'll go with 11 combined for those guys.
And then finally, before we get to picking these games, the run-pass split for Nebraska in its first 10 offensive plays. I hope this doesn't get screwed up by field position, but we'll just say whatever it is, run-pass split, first 10 plays. How many runs, how many passes?
I'll go right on what I think they're going to be, which is 60-40 run.
Yeah. I'll actually say 70-30 on this in favor of the run.
Okay. All right. We're off by one play. Nebraska at UCLA, they're a 1.5 point favorite on Saturday night. What do you think?
Okay. Well, I think that this is going to be an ugly game. I think Nico's going to have a nice night. Nebraska's going to do what it has to do to get the ball into the hands of its playmakers. The big thing for TJ Lateef is to avoid turnovers. If he starts to have some freshman jitters and turns the ball over, then I think it just puts this game on a platter for UCLA to be able to take. I do think there's some kind of a factor in this game about Nebraska wanting to prove a point Not just that it can win without Dylan Raiola, but that the UCLA game a year ago in Lincoln, you heard Deshaun Singleton mention that on Tuesday, was an anomaly. I like Nebraska to win this game. I'm going to say 24-21.
Yeah, I'm right in the same ballpark for like all the same reasons. I think you'll see a lot of score predictions this week, and they won't really change because of who the quarterback is. I think that's a credit to TJ, obviously, but also Dana Holgorsen and the plan that they're able to put together for him. So I'm going to go a little bit, a smidge higher. You know what? Let's go poetry on this one. Nebraska returns a favor, wins at the Rose Bowl, for the same score UCLA won at Memorial Stadium last year, 27-20.
27-20. Okay. Yep. All right. We got two games to pick very quickly here at the end. Big Ten game of the week, number 9 in the college football playoff ranking. Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite at number 20, Iowa. This is 2:30 p.m. on CBS. It's supposed to be cold and rainy in Iowa City on Saturday afternoon,
which you would think
right up Oregon's alley.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But that was my question.
Really. Not
what
really.
Team does it favor? I mean, Oregon's not this like pretty, like, oh, we can't handle it, elements anymore. To like, they are physical and tough, and they got that edge to them. With that being said, Iowa catching 6.5 at home, like in front of a juiced crowd with the, it turns to night at halftime. Yeah. Give me the Hawks. I don't know about to win the game, but give me Iowa to cover.
I actually like them to win the game. I think Iowa wins the game. Maybe this is recency bias and seeing what Iowa has done its last couple of times out, but I'll pick Iowa to win the game. And this is an intriguing game, and it's going
to be tough for them to score points, but
like they'll really find a way on defense or special teams to do something. Yeah. It's a playoff eliminator for Iowa. Oregon can withstand a loss, but boy, the Ducks don't want to lose this one. To completely fall out of the Big Ten race. All right, national game of the week. We go to the Big 12 in Lubbock, Texas. It's a big one on the national scene for CFP implications. Number 7 BYU is 8-0. Number 8 Texas Tech is 8-1. This is an 11 a.m. ABC kickoff. Red Raiders are a 10.5-point favorite.
I like the look of BYU, but I just think I think Texas Tech will separate themselves from the rest of the conference with this game, and they'll put their stamp on it. So give me Red Raiders to cover.
Okay. I'm happy to take 10.5 points with BYU.
Yeah, they're good. There's no doubt.
I would like the non-Big 12 fans to watch this and check out number 47 for BYU, Bear Bachmeier, their freshman quarterback, who wears the wrong jersey number. No quarterback should wear 47, but he plays like a linebacker, and he throws the ball well too. So I don't know that BYU wins, gets out of Lubbock with a victory, but 10.5 points is plenty enough for me. I'll take the Cougs.
Couldn't pass it up. All right, that's it. We'll talk to you on the mailbag tomorrow. And thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, you could check out Locked On Big Ten. I'm sure they'll have a lot on Iowa, Oregon this weekend. Find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.